Unaware the janitor she mocked every single morning was the man who owned the building. Clara Bennett laughed freely. What she didn't know was that her laughter was being remembered. Every word, every gesture, every dismissive glance. Clara believed power looked expensive, loud, and important. She never imagined it could wear worn shoes and push a mop quietly down a hallway. But when the truth surfaced, there was no shouting, no public humiliation, only a signature that ended her career forever. Stay with me, because this story proves why the people you overlook are often the ones deciding your future, and why the smallest moments create the biggest consequences. Clara Bennett was proud of herself, and she had every reason to be, at least in her own eyes. At 32, she had climbed faster than anyone in her department. Designer clothes that spoke before she did, a corner office that was promised but not yet delivered, a voice that carried authority even when it didn't need to. She believed success meant visibility. If people weren't noticing you, you weren't important. Clara had grown up watching her mother work 3 jobs, watching exhaustion become normal, watching invisible labor go unrewarded. She remembered her mother coming home at midnight, smelling of cleaning supplies and fryer grease, collapsing on a worn couch without even removing her shoes. She remembered the way her mother's hands looked, cracked, calloused, aged beyond their years. She had promised herself she would never be invisible, never be the person people look past, never be forgotten in a room. So she made noise. She made sure her achievements were seen, her opinions heard, her presence felt in every space she occupied. Every morning, Clara entered the corporate building, with her heels clicking confidently against polished floors. She timed her arrival perfectly, right when the morning crowd peaked. Maximum visibility. She wanted people to turn, to notice, to remember that Clara Bennett had arrived. And every morning, she passed the janitor. He was older, quiet, always cleaning the same hallway at the same time. Gray hair that had probably once been dark brown. Worn uniform that had been washed 1,000 times. Steady hands that moved without urgency or complaint. She never learned his name, never asked, never wondered if he had a story worth knowing. To Clara, he was part of the background, like the walls, the lights, the floors beneath her feet, functional, forgettable, beneath consideration. She had categorized him the moment she first saw him, and once Clara categorized someone, she rarely reconsidered. At first, Clara simply ignored him. A polite nod here and there, the bare minimum of acknowledgement. Then ignoring turned into impatience. She sighed loudly when he cleaned near her office, rolled her eyes when the floor was still damp, checked her phone dramatically when his cart blocked her path, tapped her foot when he moved too slowly. One morning, she joked loudly to a colleague, "Imagine being stuck doing that forever. Same hallway, same mop, same life. No ambition, no growth. Just repetition." They laughed. The janitor didn't react. He simply moved his mop aside and allowed them to pass. That calm irritated Clara. Silence always did. Because silence made her feel unseen, and being unseen was Clara's greatest fear. She began testing boundaries, leaving coffee cups on surfaces he had just cleaned, walking through wet floors deliberately, speaking louder when he was nearby, as if volume could erase his presence entirely, interrupting his work without apology. Once, she watched him carefully arrange caution signs. Before mopping a section of hallway, she walked straight through it anyway, left footprints across his freshly cleaned floor, didn't look back. The janitor simply started over. No complaint, no frustration, just patient repetition. What Clara didn't know was that the man cleaning the floors had once built companies from nothing. He had negotiated billion-dollar deals in boardrooms across 3 continents, hired thousands of people, shaped industries, changed markets, and he had learned long ago that observing people quietly reveals more than confronting them ever could. Silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. It was wisdom, choosing when to speak and when to simply watch. There was one person who saw differently. Marcus, a senior analyst who had worked at the firm for 12 years. Quiet, observant, respected by everyone who knew him. He noticed how Clara treated the janitor, and it troubled him. One afternoon, Marcus approached her casually at the coffee station. "You ever talk to him?" he asked, nodding toward the hallway. Clara looked confused. "Who?" "The janitor." "Samuel." Clara shrugged dismissively. "Why would I?" Marcus studied her for a moment, really studied her. "Just curious," he said quietly. Then he walked away. Clara didn't think about that conversation again. She was too busy climbing, too focused on her next presentation, her next achievement, her next visible win. But Marcus remembered, because Marcus had once made the same mistake. Years ago, he had dismissed someone he thought was unimportant. A quiet man who asked simple questions, who seemed out of place in high-level meetings. That someone turned out to be a silent partner, who influenced every promotion decision in the building. Marcus had been overlooked for advancement for 3 years, because of how he had treated that man. He had learned the hard way. In corporate spaces, the people you underestimate are often the ones with the longest memory. Marcus had wanted to warn Clara, but he knew warnings only work for people who believe consequences apply to them, and Clara didn't believe that yet. As weeks passed, Clara's behavior intensified, not because she was cruel by nature, but because unchecked disrespect becomes habit. She began making jokes about the janitor to clients. "We have someone who keeps things spotless around here," she would say with a laugh, "even if he's a bit slow about it." She complained to building management. "Can't the cleaning happen earlier? It's distracting when we're trying to work." She never considered that earlier meant the janitor would need to arrive at 4 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. She never thought about his life, his family, his reasons. One morning, Clara was particularly stressed. A presentation had gone poorly. A client had asked questions she couldn't answer. She felt her carefully constructed image slipping. As she walked through the hallway, fuming, the janitor was changing a light bulb. His ladder partially blocked the corridor. "Seriously?" Clara snapped. The janitor looked down. "I'll be done in just a moment." "I don't have a moment," Clara interrupted. She squeezed past the ladder aggressively. Her shoulder bumped it. The janitor gripped the sides to steady himself. "Please be careful," he said calmly. Clara spun around. "Maybe you should be more careful about where you decide to work." She stormed off. The janitor watched her go. Then he pulled out a small notebook from his pocket, wrote down the date, the time, and a single word: pattern. The moment that sealed everything came during an important client visit. Clara was showing off, talking loudly about quarterly projections, walking fast to project urgency and importance, performing success like a rehearsed theatrical scene. The clients, a potential partnership worth millions, followed closely behind her. She wanted to impress them, wanted them to see her as indispensable. As they rounded the hallway corner, the janitor was mopping again, right in their path. Clara stopped abruptly. Her expression shifted immediately. Annoyance, then anger, then performative frustration. "Can you move?" she snapped. "Some of us are actually working here." The clients shifted uncomfortably. One cleared his throat. Another looked at the floor. The janitor stepped aside immediately. "Sorry," he said calmly. But Clara wasn't finished. She had an audience, and she wanted them to see her as someone who commanded every space she entered. She turned to the clients with a forced laugh. "No offense," she added loudly, "but if you had aimed higher in life, you wouldn't be in the way right now." The hallway went silent. The clients exchanged deeply uncomfortable glances. The janitor looked at her, not angrily, not hurt, just thoughtfully, like someone studying a specimen under glass, like a scientist observing behavior, without emotional attachment. He nodded once. "You're right," he said softly. "I should have aimed higher. Perhaps I still can." Then he went back to cleaning. The clients exchanged glances again. Clara didn't notice. She was already moving forward, already talking, already erasing the moment from her mind. One of the clients, an older woman named Mrs. Hendricks, glanced back at the janitor. She had noticed something in his eyes, something that didn't match his uniform, but she said nothing. That moment felt insignificant to Clara, a minor inconvenience already forgotten, but it was quietly filed away, exactly where consequences are stored. The janitor's name was Samuel Royce. No one at the company knew that. Because Samuel didn't correct assumptions, he owned the building, the firm operating inside it, and several companies like it across 3 states. His net worth was estimated at over $400 million. But Samuel didn't believe in announcing authority. He believed in watching character. Years earlier, Samuel had built his empire silently. No press releases, no magazine covers, no interviews with business publications. He had watched too many wealthy people lose themselves in their own reflections, watched them become caricatures of success, rather than architects of value. After stepping back from public life at 58, he chose anonymity, not to test people, but to live without filters, to see how humans behaved when they thought no consequences existed, to understand what people revealed when they believed no one important was watching. He had seen brilliance masked by humility, kindness hidden in quiet gestures, integrity living in small, consistent choices. And he had also seen cruelty, dressed in ambition's clothing, disrespect disguised as efficiency, contempt masquerading as standards. Clara Bennett had just shown him exactly who she was when she thought no one important was watching. And Samuel Royce never forgot character, because character, he had learned, was the only reliable predictor of future behavior. Skills could be taught, knowledge could be acquired, but character was either present or absent, and it revealed itself in how people treated those who could do nothing for them. From that day on, Samuel paid closer attention, not just to Clara, but to how she treated everyone she believed had no power. Receptionists, interns, security guards, delivery workers, cafeteria staff. Clara was consistent, efficient with superiors, charming with clients, cold with everyone else. She interrupted the receptionist mid-sentence when asking for messages, ignored the intern's questions as if they hadn't spoken at all, dismissed the security guard's greeting with a distracted wave, complained when her lunch order was wrong, without considering that mistakes happen. Samuel watched it all. He never intervened, never corrected her, never revealed himself, because power doesn't rush judgment. It waits. It gathers evidence. It looks for patterns, not incidents. And when the time comes, it acts decisively. Samuel kept a small leather notebook, not for punishment, but for pattern recognition. He wrote down dates, interactions, moments that revealed core values. He noted who helped others without being asked, who stayed late to assist a struggling colleague, who treated every person with consistent respect, regardless of title or position. And he noted the opposite. Clara's page was filling quickly, but so were others. Some with commendations, some with concerns. Samuel believed in comprehensive observation, in understanding the full picture before making decisions that affected lives. 3 days before the meeting that would end everything, something unusual happened. Samuel spoke to Clara directly, intentionally. She was rushing through the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, completely absorbed in a heated conversation. Samuel was cleaning near her office door. As she approached, he stepped aside. But this time, he spoke. "Miss Bennett." Clara stopped, surprised that he knew her name, surprised that he had spoken at all. "Yes?" Samuel met her eyes. Really met them. "Be careful," he said quietly. Clara frowned. "Careful of what?" Samuel paused, considered his words. "Of who you think is watching, and of who you think isn't." Then he returned to his work. Clara stood there for 3 seconds, processing. Then she laughed, shook her head, and walked into her office. She told the story to 2 colleagues later that day. "Even the janitor thinks he can give me advice now," she said. "I must really be moving up if everyone feels entitled to share their opinions." They laughed, but one of them, Marcus, didn't. He had a bad feeling, a feeling he couldn't quite name. He almost said something, almost warned her, but he knew she wouldn't listen. Some lessons only land when they arrive as consequences. 3 weeks later, Clara received an email. Subject: mandatory executive meeting. Board attendance required. Her heart raced. This was it, she thought. Her breakthrough. The promotion she had been chasing for 18 months. Corner office. Executive title. Real power. She prepared meticulously. New suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored. Rehearsed talking points. Confidence dialed to maximum. She practiced her surprised but grateful expression in the mirror. Rehearsed how she would accept recognition gracefully. She entered the boardroom at exactly 9 a.m. Executives she had never seen before filled the seats. The energy felt different. Formal. Heavy. Final. Not celebratory. Clara's confidence wavered. Then she froze. At the head of the table sat Samuel. Clean suit. Expensive. Understated. Calm posture. Familiar eyes that suddenly looked different in this context. Not the janitor. Not anymore. Someone leaned toward her and whispered, "That's Samuel Royce. He owns this building, and about 40 others. He's been observing operations." Her stomach dropped. The room stood as he gestured. Samuel nodded once. "Please," he said softly. "Sit." Clara's legs barely carried her to the chair. "If you're still watching right now, you're not here by accident. Stories like this reward patience. They unfold slowly, build carefully, reveal truth in layers. So if you appreciate deep billionaire stories that respect your intelligence and understand that real consequences take time to develop, subscribe quietly. You're exactly who this channel is made for, because you understand the most important stories aren't about what happens quickly. They're about what happens inevitably. The boardroom felt heavier than any space Clara had ever entered, not because of tension, but because of authority. The kind that doesn't need to announce itself. The kind that exists in stillness. Samuel Royce didn't raise his voice. He didn't introduce himself with credentials. He simply looked around the room until everyone else stopped moving. Then he spoke. I've been observing this company closely for 6 months. Not from reports. Not from presentations. From the ground. Clara's pulse raced. She replayed every interaction she had ever had. With the janitor. With Samuel. Inside her head. Every joke. Every sigh. Every dismissive comment. Her throat tightened. Samuel continued calmly. Numbers matter. Performance matters. But how people treat those they believe have no influence matters more. No one spoke. Clara felt exposed. Like the walls themselves were listening. Like her entire history was being displayed on an invisible screen. I've seen brilliant work ethic, Samuel said. I've also seen casual cruelty. The kind people don't even recognize anymore. Because it's become routine. Because it's become their default. He let that settle. Silence filled the room like water. Disrespect isn't always loud, he continued. Sometimes it's a sigh, a joke, an assumption that someone's time matters less than yours, that someone's dignity is negotiable, based on their position. Clara's hands trembled beneath the table. I believe, Samuel said carefully, that how someone treats people who can do nothing for them reveals everything about their character. He paused. And character matters, because eventually, character becomes culture. Samuel turned his gaze toward Clara, not sharply, not accusingly, just directly, with the weight of someone who had already made a decision. Miss Bennett, her name felt like a sentencing. Yes, she managed, her voice barely audible. I believe you've had frequent interactions with someone you assumed had no authority. Her face burned. Yes, she whispered. Samuel nodded slowly. You were efficient, he said. Productive, ambitious, talented. Your work output has been consistently impressive. Relief flickered briefly in her chest. Then he added, but you were also dismissive, condescending, and careless with respect. The room remained silent. Samuel folded his hands. That combination is dangerous, not because it reflects poor performance, but because it reflects poor character. And poor character in leadership positions creates toxic culture. It gives permission to others to behave the same way. Clara wanted to explain, to defend herself, to rewind time. But explanation, without humility, only confirms the problem. And she knew it. Samuel didn't raise a finger, didn't shout. He slid a folder across the table. Clara's hands shook as she opened it. Inside were evaluations, dates, transcribed conversations, incident reports, all documented quietly, professionally, thoroughly. March 15th. Dismissed janitor's presence with derogatory comment to colleague. March 22nd. Walk through freshly cleaned floor deliberately, requiring work to be repeated. April 3rd. Made joke about janitor's life trajectory in front of clients. April 18th. Publicly humiliated janitor during client tour. On and on. 16 documented incidents. Each one dated, witnessed, recorded. I don't fire people for mistakes, Samuel said quietly. Mistakes are human. They're opportunities for growth. He gestured to the folder. But this isn't mistakes. This is pattern. This is character revealing itself. Consistently over time. Clara's vision blurred. I release people, Samuel continued, who reveal their character when they think no one important is watching. This wasn't humiliation. It was worse. It was final. It was the kind of consequence that couldn't be negotiated away. You're being terminated effective immediately, Samuel said softly. Your severance has been arranged fairly. Your projects will be reassigned. This meeting is a courtesy, not a negotiation. No applause. No gasps. Just truth landing gently and permanently. Clara opened her mouth, then closed it. Because what could she say? That she didn't mean it? That she was joking? That she deserved another chance? None of that mattered now. Actions had created a pattern, and patterns had created consequences. Samuel stood. I wish you well, Miss Bennett. I genuinely do. But I can't have leaders in this company who measure worth by visibility, who treat people as furniture when they're not useful. He walked toward the door, then paused, turned back. The people you overlook are often the ones deciding your future. I hope you remember that, not as punishment, but as wisdom. And he left. The door closed with a quiet click. Clara sat alone, surrounded by executives who wouldn't meet her eyes. Clara packed her desk alone. No one spoke to her, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. People didn't know what to say, so they said nothing. She realized then how fragile visibility was, how quickly admiration dissolves. When status disappears, the office buzzed quietly around her, but no one approached. No one offered comfort. No one asked if she was okay. She had built her network on performance, not relationship. And performance without connection evaporates instantly. As she walked out of the building for the last time, cardboard box in her arms, she saw Samuel again. This time, he was mopping the floor. The uniform returned. The disguise restored. She stopped. Their eyes met. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Samuel looked up. I know, he replied calmly. I didn't know, he interrupted gently. You didn't need to know. Respect shouldn't require recognition. Dignity shouldn't require credentials. Clara nodded. Tears blurred her vision. I understand now. Samuel's expression softened slightly. I hope you do. Not for me, for you. Because this lesson will follow you until you truly learn it. But apologies after consequences don't change outcomes. They only change the person saying them. Months later, Clara struggled. Not because she lacked skill, but because reputations follow energy. Job interviews went well, until reference checks happened. Talented but difficult, one report said. High performer, low collaborator, said another. Capable, but lacks emotional intelligence. Clara replayed moments she once ignored. The jokes, the sighs, the dismissiveness. All the small cruelties she had committed, without considering them cruel. She learned something painful. Respect costs nothing, but disrespect compounds. It accumulates interest. And eventually, the bill comes due. She began therapy, not because she wanted to, but because loneliness forced her to look inward. Her therapist, an older woman with kind eyes, asked a simple question. Who did you become when you thought no one was watching? Clara couldn't answer, because she had never asked herself that. She had only asked, who do people think I am? Those are very different questions. 6 months after her termination, Clara found work, not in a corner office, not with an executive title, but in a smaller firm, willing to give her a second chance. Her new manager was younger than her, less experienced. Clara's pride bristled, but she remembered Samuel's words. The people you overlook are often the ones deciding your future. So she listened. She helped. She respected everyone, not because of their position, but because of their humanity. One day, a cleaning person worked near her desk. Clara stopped working. What's your name? She asked. The woman looked surprised. Maria. Thank you for keeping this space clean, Maria. I appreciate it. Maria smiled. Thank you for noticing. It was a small moment, but small moments compound too. Samuel continued his routine, not to deceive, but to stay grounded. He believed anonymity was the purest test of humanity. Wealth distorts perception. Titles create performances, but a mop and a uniform, they reveal truth. One evening, a young employee stopped him in the hallway. Mr. Royce? Samuel looked up. You don't have to do this, the employee said. Clean, I mean. You own everything. Samuel smiled. I know. That's exactly why I do it. The employee looked confused. Power is easy to abuse, Samuel explained. When you forget what it feels like to be invisible. When you forget that every person has a story worth respecting. He returned to his work. The employee stood there, thinking, watching, learning. 1 year after Clara's termination, Samuel received an unexpected letter, handwritten, from Clara Bennett. He opened it carefully. Dear Mr. Royce, I won't insult you by asking for my job back. I'm writing to say thank you. Not for firing me, though I deserved it, but for showing me who I had become. I spent my whole life terrified of being invisible, so I made noise. I demanded attention, and in doing so, I stopped seeing other people clearly. You taught me that visibility, without character, is just performance. And performance without humanity is eventually punished. I'm different now, not perfect, but aware. I hope you continue, whatever you're doing, because the world needs more people who remember that power is revealed in how we treat those who can do nothing for us. With genuine gratitude, Clara Bennett. Samuel folded the letter carefully, placed it in his desk, and smiled quietly. Because consequences are only valuable when they create growth. Unaware the janitor was the owner, Clara showed her true self, and that self decided her fate, not through cruelty, but through pattern. Because the people you overlook today may be the ones deciding your tomorrow. Character isn't what you show, it's what you reveal. When you think no one important is watching, and someone is always watching, the question isn't whether you'll be seen. The question is, what will they see when they finally look? If you watch this entire story, you understand something most people don't. These stories aren't about billionaires. They're about behavior, about the invisible tests we all face, about the quiet consequences of careless cruelty. Subscribing helps this channel keep telling stories that quietly change how people see the world. And honestly, people like you are why this channel exists. You stayed. You listened. You understood. That matters more than you know. The end.